Well, the Blue Jackets might not be in the playoffs, but the Cleveland Monsters sure are, and it's about time for a Monsters Monday. So we're going to do that on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also have to let you know that this episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Like I said at the top of the show, it's Monsters Monday. It's been a minute, and they decided to get back to their winning ways. Been a real up and down season for the Monsters. They ended up just kind of sneaking into the playoffs. They were the 5th seed in a division where 5 teams make it. Had to play a best-of-3 round against the Toronto Marlies, which honestly was probably in the Monsters' favor, especially because of one player that we'll talk about in a minute here. And they ended up sweeping. They needed overtime to do it twice, but hey, again, they don't ask how, they ask how many, right? And the Monsters went 2-0 against the Toronto Marlies. I do not think that there is any surprise in who the big players in this series were. So we're going to talk a little bit about who stepped up, how we are unsurprised by that. I want to talk a little bit about the Laval Rocket, who the Blue Jackets will either play on Wednesday or Thursday, depending on what the Cleveland Cavaliers do, because they might need the court on Wednesday. If so, the series will start on the Thursday. If not, it will start on the Wednesday. So we'll talk a little bit about the Laval Rocket. And then I got a really fun mailbag question as well about the Monsters. So we're going to get into that as well if we have time. If we don't have time, don't worry. I do think that I could make an entire episode just about this one mailbag question. So we'll see how it goes. Let's talk about the series, which the Monsters were not necessarily the favorites in, right? They were the lower seed. The Blue Jackets, I don't know why I keep saying that. I know why I keep saying that. It's because it's muscle memory. But the Cleveland Monsters did not come into the postseason particularly hot. They were one win away from being eliminated. The Belleville Senators had 79 points. The Monsters had 81 points. 20 fewer than the team they're about to face in a minute, which is the Laval Rocket. But they went in on a 3-game losing streak. They were 5-4-0-1 in their last 10. And just for people who aren't clear on that, 4 wins, 5 regulation losses, and 1 shootout loss because the AHL.com a website has wins, losses, overtime losses, and shootout losses as different things, presumably to make it a little bit clearer on the difference between regulation wins and regulation or overtime wins. I'm not sure, but the point is here that the Monsters just snuck in, and partially that's just because the North Division is really, really dumb. Like the Belleville Senators, who did not make it, did have a better point percentage than the Springfield Thunderbirds in the Atlantic, who did make it. The Rockford Ice Hogs, who also made it, and the Chicago Wolves, who were the 4th seed in the Central. Oh, and actually, they would have finished 3rd in the Central. The Belleville Senators with 7. Oh no, excuse me, no, they wouldn't. I can read. They would have finished 4th, but only 1 point behind 3rd in the Central, which was the Grand Rapids Griffins. So they would also have finished above the Tucson Roadrunners in the Pacific. They did not, and the Belleville Senators did not make the playoffs because, again, the North is stupid. The worst team in that division, the Utica Comets, would have been a playoff team in the Central Division. and they started the season on a 13-game losing streak. That's how tough the North Division is. You've got the regular season champions in there. You've got the Rochester Americans, who are always going to be a tough team to beat. The Monsters play the Laval Rocket next, and whoever wins that will face the winner of Rochester and Syracuse. But I want to talk a little bit about the Marlies Monsters season to just kind of go back to where I got distracted from. The Monsters sneak into the playoffs, play the Marlies, who they have had success against basically since Jet Greaves arrived, is the thing. The Monsters have not been undefeated against the Marlies. However, going into this series, Jet Greaves had never lost to the Toronto Marlies. He was 14-0 in his time playing against the Marlies. He has now improved to 16-0. And it does really just kind of show you how much he puts this team on his back, right? He's got a 914 save percentage over those 2 games. 2 overtime wins, made, I believe, 36 of 39 saves in the series deciding game, which would have been game 2. And like, again, small sample size, right? Like, most teams have played 2 games. Some teams have played 3, right? There are a lot of goalies here that are performing better than Jet Greaves at the minute. Again, 914 save percentage, 6 goals on 70 shots faced. That puts him at 13th. But Matt Murray only played 1 game, made 46 of 50 saves. That was the series decider. You know, a lot of these teams have. It's a small sample size, is what I'm saying here. Like, there is absolutely no way that Drew Comesso is going to keep his 985 save percentage rolling. Is the point here? That's all I'll say about that. But again, for a team that struggled down the stretch there, having Jet Greaves back is huge, and he showed exactly who he is for this team. And again, just how important he is for this team. He had a 920 in the regular season, played 40 games, and allowed, where is it? Oh, God, I can't do math on the fly. I think 102 goals on almost 1,300 shots. Yeah, 102 goals. There it is. I can read. I can do, like, the point I'm making here is that Jet Greaves is the backbone of this team, right? I believe it was actually last season the Monsters were contending for that first round bye, right? I think it was they had to win all 3 games maybe in regulation, maybe just win all 3 games to finish the season, because it was so close that it was going to be either them, Rochester, or Syracuse to get that first round bye. They play Toronto 3 times in 3 days. Jet Greaves plays all 3 games, wins all 3 games. He just he gets up when it's time to play Toronto, which I really do respect about him. And he's been excellent this season. They should probably enjoy while it lasts, because I don't think he's going to be a monster next season, which is, great news for Blue Jackets fans, bad news for Monsters fans. Although we'll talk about what's going to go on with the Monsters probably a little bit later on. Probably not in this episode, maybe later on this week, because there's some movements being made. I want to talk a little bit more about Jet Greaves. And I also want to talk about getting Denton Mateychuk back, which has also been huge for this team. So we'll do both of those things in just a second here on Locked on Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's super easy to lose track. I do it all the time. That's where Monarch Money comes in. They are your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And it's not just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center. You track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much money I was spending on the little treat economy, TM. Unsustainable. I understand this. And now I budget smarter and save more. And I don't have to juggle multiple apps. I don't have to go to my banking app and then a budgeting app and then a spreadsheet and then back to my budgeting app. You can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals all in one place. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for 50% off your first year. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We are doing a Monsters Monday. We're talking about, well, mostly we're talking about Jet Greaves. We'll talk about some other guys in a minute here, but I wanted to kind of finish off by talking about Jet Greaves and how important he is to this team. Because you just, like, the regular season numbers say it all, right? He's been carrying the load for this team for like 3 seasons now, and his backup, Zachary Sorchenko, has not been, like, terrible by any stretch of the imagination. He's got a 900 save percentage, allowed on average 3 goals a game. But where Jet had 21 wins, 11 losses, and 6 overtime losses, Sorchenko only had 10 wins, 11 losses, and 5 overtime losses. So of the 13 extra games, or the 12 extra games that Greaves played, he won 11 of them and lost 1 in overtime. So he just makes this team better just purely by being in the lineup. And, you know, he's been their MVP. He was their MVP last season. He's been their MVP this season. The Monsters really struggled this season because the Blue Jackets decided to take him from the AHL. Again, they struggled similarly when they took Luca Del Blues out of the lineup. We'll talk about it in a second here, I'm sure. They struggled when they lost Denton Mateychuk basically permanently in, what was it, like October? No, November. Late November, I think they took. Denton Mateychuk, and then he just didn't leave the lineup for the Blue Jackets. You know, so I think that was a big loss as well. But Jet Greaves, for me, he's the MVP of this team. He is the X factor for this team. And if Jet Greaves has a good night, the Monsters typically have a good night. Again, like, you can almost, it's almost, you can set your watch to it. Like, if Jet Greaves has a save percentage above about a 905 or a 910, Monsters usually win the game. If he doesn't, so for example, the first 2 games he played in the regular season, he allowed 7 goals in the first game, and then 4 goals in the first 26 minutes or 27 minutes of the second game. And then after that, he bounced back and he had a 909, a 926, a 917, a 944, a shutout, a 900 in whatever, how many games that is, like his next 6 games. Like, he bounced back. And again, I don't think it's particularly fair for the Monsters that they kept losing Jet Greaves. Like, it seemed random, you know. It wasn't even like it was, oh, so and so is injured. Sometimes they just took him because they needed a goalie, and they didn't trust Daniil Tarasov. And that's, like, partially it was that Elvis got injured at the end of the season, but, you know, Jet Greaves played 6 games in 9 nights or something like that. Like, he played the Wednesday against Grand Rapids in Cleveland, drove down to Columbus, played the next night, got Friday off, played Saturday, played Sunday, got Monday off, played Tuesday, got Wednesday off, played Thursday. So, what's that, 7 games in 10 nights to finish the season? He did not play in the last handful of games that the Monsters had when they got him back. I think it was the last weekend, I think. Which it was fun to see Evan Gardner get a start. I thought that was, you know, reward the kid. And he did his best. The Monsters did not show up for him, which they do that sometimes, you know. But, you know, give him a week off, and apparently he's good. He's ready to go again. He played both games against the Marlies, continued his streak of not losing to the Marlies. Didn't have a great first game. Had an 893 save percentage, 3 goals on 28 shots, but They won in overtime, and then the second game against the Marlies was, I believe, the longest game in Cleveland Monsters history. He made 39 of 42 saves for a 929 save percentage. That's the Jet Greaves we know and love, right? And again, it just feels like the more he plays, the better he gets. Laval is going to be interesting, and we'll talk about Laval in a second here. But I also wanted to say it's not just Jet Greaves, right? A lot of the guys showed up. I think an interesting one is Denton Mateychuk, who's currently tied for the lead in points. Again, small sample size. Most teams have only played 2 or 3 games, but he's got 2 goals, 2 assists, which leads the way for both rookies and defensemen and rookie defensemen, which is fun. He, I believe, has had a goal and an assist in both games. Again, he took the weekend off after the regular season finished for the Blue Jackets. They sent him down to Cleveland. He and Jet took the weekend, which I believe the Monsters had clinched the playoffs by then. So it wasn't like they didn't need them to get into the playoffs, so they might as well rest them. They can't affect their standings, and I think it was the right choice. And he seems like he's back and ready to go. And again, Denton Mateychuk, in the 27 regular season games he played before getting called up, which he got called up. I can find this out. His last regular season game was December 19th. So he played 27 games with the Monsters and had 25 points in 27 games for them as a rookie defenseman. In the 2024 playoffs, he had 3 assists in 4 games. And that was the fun one because he joined, I believe it was game 4 of the series against Hershey. So the Monsters were down 3-0 in the series. Denton Mateychuk comes in and the team wins the next 3 in a row. And I don't think that those things are like, they didn't win 3 in a row directly and only because of Denton Mateychuk. But there was a minute there where they were like, do we only win games with Denton Mateychuk in the lineup? And like a little bit, yeah. Obviously, they couldn't get it done at the end of the series. Hershey wins in 7. And that does feel like if the Monsters make it out of the North, they are going to have to play Hershey because it feels like that's just what you do in the Eastern Conference Final. If you are from the North Division, you will play Hershey to get to the Stanley Cup, the Calder Cup playoffs. Excuse me. But again, those 2 guys are the big ones, right? Like you miss your number 1 defenseman, you miss your number 1 goalie. To a lesser extent, getting Luca Del Babaluz back was big. He didn't miss as much time. I think he only missed like maybe a month or so. He got called up when Sean Monahan was injured, and then they sent him down during the 4 Nations, and then I don't believe they called him back up after that. And again, great season for him. He, I believe, was leading the AHL when he got called up, which is great. Again, as a 20-year-old, he finished. If we can filter this a little bit, for players who played more than 10 games. No, I can't find it. Never mind. But he finished. He did not finish top 20 in league scoring. The Monsters did have 2 guys that finished there. Terrific Swansky had 60 points in 65 games. Rocco Grimaldi had 58 points in 66 games. And then the Luca Del Blues, where is he? There he is, 53 points in 61 games. So slowed down a little bit after the call up, missed some time due to injury, but was still an extremely big part of this team. And again, I feel like they should enjoy him while they have him, because they don't know that they're going to be able to keep him for very much longer after this season. So those are the 2 big reasons that the Monsters won this series. Obviously, there was more there. I think Rocco Grimaldi has been huge for this team. I think Trey Flick-Swansky is always big for this team. Madison Bowey has 3 assists in 2 games. And I believe he assisted on at least one of the game winners. Luca Pinelli, 2 goals in 2 games, had 2 goals, including the overtime winner in that first game, which again, huge. Guillaume Richard, who everyone was kind of like, oh yeah, he's a guy, he'll fill a roster spot. Defensive defenseman with 2 points in 2 games. There's a lot of good going on in the lineup right now, and I think it's only going to get better. Rocco Grimaldi has 12 shots in 2 games and 1 goal. So once his shooting percentage comes back up, I'm expecting a little outpouring there. Again, Trey Flick-Swansky hasn't scored yet. Mikhail Pucha hasn't scored yet. Roman Ashan hasn't scored yet. These guys all have over 4 shots a game. So the Monsters definitely have more to give. So we'll talk about that in just a second. Actually, we'll see how much can they give, who needs to step up, and can they actually go and beat Laval in a 5-game series? So we'll talk about all of that in just a second here at Locked On Blue Jackets. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Let's talk about Wonderful Pistachios, who is I genuinely love. Are you looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. They are one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1-ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better-for-you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller for longer. I love the no shells variety. I am a gremlin. I like to eat them 14 at a time. They are my go-to plain snack because the reason I ended up trying them was I was at the airport and was like, oh, hey, I know these guys. Let's give them a go. And they are genuinely delicious. So whether you're snacking at your desk, on a trip, or you just need a quick protein hit, they are the go-to snack. They come in no shells and in shells as well. Now, like I said, I love the no shells variety, but if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snackin and get crackin with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets, or Locked On Monsters, as we are doing today. Let's talk about the Laval Rocket, who have been extremely good this season. Regular season champions, obviously. Seem to have really pulled it together after a disappointing season last year, where they started out really strong and then lost a bunch of games down the stretch. They flipped that script. They started weak and then won a bunch of games down the stretch here. Again, the best regular season team this year. They beat out Hershey. They beat out Colorado. Just again, an excellent season from the Laval Rocket, helped almost exclusively by Caden Primo, who came in late and had a .927 save percentage in the 50 games that he played for the Rocket this season. He really, really struggled at the NHL level. So to the fact that the Canadians put him on waivers and sent him down, and then he proceeded to turn into one of the best goalies in the AHL. I think he was like the 3rd or 4th best goalie in the AHL by save percentage. Technically second. The only goalie with a better save percentage than him was Matthew Murray in Milwaukee. Mikey DiPietro had the same number of he had the same save percentage, but played in way more games. So Caden Primo only played in 26 games for the Rocket down the stretch. DiPietro played 40. Matthew Murray played 43. So again, a slightly smaller sample size for Caden Primo, but he was excellent. Allowed fewer than 2 goals a game. That's going to be the test, and that's going to be the interesting thing. Is obviously, I feel like a lot of Blue Jackets fans are rooting for the Capitals to systematically destroy the Canadians in the NHL playoffs. And I get that. I do. I'm on your side. I am also kind of rooting for this, right? However, Samuel Montembeault, the number 1 goalie for the Canadians, is currently injured. They're rolling with Jakub Dobish, and Caden Primo is actually backing them up at the minute. It does kind of behoove the Monsters for the Canadians to stay in a little bit longer. especially if Montembeault is going to continue to be injured. Like keeping Caden Primo out of the Laval crease is kind of key. Do I think that Jet Greaves can win that goaltending duel? Sure, but Laval has a ton of shooters. They've got a ton of guys that are like, again, the Monsters had 3 players who had 50-point seasons: Luca Delba Blues, Rocco Grimaldi, Trey Fix Wolanski. The Laval Rocket only had 2 guys with 60-point seasons, but they had 6 20-goal scorers, including Florian Jackai, who had 24 goals as a rookie, which is maybe the most impressive thing on this team. He's currently called up. Owen Beck is called up. I believe Joshua is called up. Like, there's a bunch of guys that are currently in the press box for the Canadians that it would probably be good for the Monsters if they stayed in the press box for the Canadians for at least a little bit longer. But this is a beatable team. They didn't play a lot in the regular season, which surprised me. They only played each other 4 times, and I believe the Monsters won 2 and then lost 2. And I don't remember, I had it open. I don't remember whether they won both games in overtime or lost both games in overtime. I used to have a site that would do this for me, and the site no longer exists, which is annoying for many reasons. But basically, and again, like, overtime doesn't really matter in the playoffs. Like, you can't be like, oh well, they got, they only dropped 2 overtime points. I think the whichever team did it, like, they got either 4 points or 6 points out of a possible 8, right? Or they got 2 wins and 2 losses, which is kind of really what counts in the playoffs. The key thing is that the Monsters are going to start the game at home, which is huge. They play the first 2 games because of the way the AHL works. And again, I'm not sure if people know this, but I'll explain it just in case. If the 2 teams are 300 miles apart, then the higher seed gets to choose how they want to do the series, right? I think at least until they hit the Calder Cup finals. So for these the best of 5 series right now, the Rocket had a choice of, do they want to do 2 home games, 2 away games, 1 home game, or do they want to do 2 away games, 3 home games? So to cut the travel in the middle, basically. And so they decided to do the second one. So there are going to be 2 home games in Cleveland, and then they will go to Laval to finish out the series. What this means is, if the Monsters can win both home games, which the Monsters have been very good at home this season, if they can win both of those home games, they go to Laval, and they only have to win 1 of 3. This could work out in the Monsters' favor. Again, I'm looking for Jet Greaves to be a big piece of this series. I am looking for Denton Mateychuk to be huge. I'm looking for Trey Fix Wolanski to show up. He's got, I think, an assist in 2 games so far. The fascinating thing about Trey Fix Wolanski is he is a huge regular season performer, and for some reason doesn't seem to bring it as much in the playoffs. So the Monsters have made the playoffs 3 times with him. First time was his rookie season. He had a goal and an assist in 3 games. They didn't make the playoffs again until the 2024 run, which was last year. They played 14 games, and he only had 8 points in those games after 60 points in 58 in the regular season. So went from being over a point a game to being just over half a point a game in the playoffs. And whether that's playing with injury or just because the playoffs, things get harder in the playoffs, I don't know. But I'm looking for Trey Fix Wolanski to show up and step up. Again, like, 1 assist in 2 games, small sample size. They need him to show up in this series against Laval. They just do. Lucas Alba Blues, again, that's a name that needs to show up. Great to see James Malatesta get the overtime winner against Toronto in game 2. That's his only point of the season, of the series. Lucas Alba Blues only has an assist. Like, those, those are the guys that I'm looking at. Like Mikhail Pucha, I'm looking at. these are the guys that, in theory, are playing for NHL time next season, right? And we're not going to have time to talk about that because I rambled for too long, and now we're at 30 minutes. But I will tell you that what we're going to do tomorrow is, or potentially later today, maybe we'll do a 2-part episode. That'll be fun. Is the postseason for the AHL is a really good opportunity to get your name and your face on the NHL team's radar, right? So Dean Everson has just flown to Europe for the World Championships, but he got to watch game 1 of the Toronto series. And again, like, we know he's a big fan of Luca Del Blues, but you're watching guys like that. You're watching guys like Luca Pinelli. You're watching, Denton Mateychuk picked up where he left off, right? But you're looking at guys like Treyfix Wolanski, who was on an expiring contract, Mikhail Pucha, who managed to carve out a pretty decent bottom 6 role in the Blue Jackets this season due to injuries, etc. You're looking at Stanislav Svozil, for example. You're looking at Gavin Brindley, like guys that should be thinking about trying to make that next step in kind of getting yourselves on the NHL radar. Gavin Brindley has had kind of an up and down season. I'm still a big fan of him. He's another guy that I would love to see get involved in this series against Laval. No points in 2 games so far. Only 4 shots on goal, and I believe he has gone from top line winger to 4th line center, which I think is partially because they've had some injuries at center, and partially because I don't think he's been putting up the points that they expected him to. But Gavin, my guy, we need you to have a breakout season so you can come to the NHL and play on Adam Fantilli's wing for the next 10 years. But that's actually what I want to talk about in the next episode, which might be later today and might be tomorrow morning. Who knows? I got a really great question in my inbox, which I then accidentally deleted. So if you did send it, I just completely forgot who sent it. I'm very, very sorry. I'm very stupid. We know this. Basically, the gist of the question was, who on the Monsters do you expect to have like the best chance of making the NHL next season? And I was like, oh, this is a great question. I have lots of thoughts about this. Unfortunately, we don't have time to talk about it right now, so that's going to be the next episode. And I do think I have an entire episode of thoughts about this in me, so stay tuned for that. Thank you for listening to this episode. Like I said, the Monsters will either be back in action on Wednesday if the Cavs win tonight. If they lose tonight, they will be back in action on Thursday. So unfortunately, we are all waiting around for the NBA to do something before we will know what's happening with the Monsters. But thank you for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. And until tomorrow, or until later today, possibly, make sure you stay locked on.